Hi everyone, my name is Ian Quartz and this is my first video about my family history. In this video and the next series of videos, I will be sharing with you a little bit of what I've learned from my own research from Ancestry.com, from MyHeritage and other historical sites about some of the facts and different things about my family heritage and history. I don't necessarily won't go into personal details about living members of my family and or even some of my family who's passed before, but this is just a general sharing of the history of someone from North Carolina, specifically from the region of North Carolina that I'm from. And so I hope you enjoy these series of videos. I hope it encourages you and inspires you to investigate your own family history and kind of find out some of those things you may not have initially known about your own family history. So I'm going to start with what kind of got me interested and started in investigating my own family history. And it was an excerpt that I found from a book that was located at my high school. My high school was an early college, Rockingham Community College campus in Whitworth, North Carolina. And this excerpt shared a little bit of the history of the white or the European Quartz family. Now, my last name is Quartz. I am an African American, and I had the benefit and the privilege of having my great grandfather, who's the oldest Quartz I know, living for most of my life. He passed last year at 101 years old. But I didn't know that there was necessarily a white Quartz family. But this excerpt, which I'm going to share with you, kind of started my history journey. So as you can see, this is a picture of Daniel William Quartz that was in the excerpt of the Rockingham County family history book. And a little bit about this man. This man was the owner of the Rockingham County Quartz Plantation in the 1800s. He lived from 1801 to the 1880s. He presumably, he and his family owned my ancestors, and he was an attorney and represented Rockingham and Surrey counties in the North Carolina legislature, and was also the state treasurer. So this excerpt got me started researching my own family history, and it led me to create an Ancestry.com family tree, and to begin to study and to dig into the family history. And the earliest Quartz I found in my investigations, so I put in my name, my father's name, my grandfather's name, my great-grandfather's name, and I got connected to who my great-grandfather's father was, who was a Joseph Quartz, and his father, who was a William Quartz, a Reverend William Quartz. That Reverend William Quartz was born in the 1830s and 1840s. There, depending on the census record you read, there is a difference in those two dates. And his mother was listed as an Amy Quartz. She was born presumably in the year 1801. So I went and started digging. Who is Amy Quartz? Where was she from? It said that her birthplace was Wake County, North Carolina. That's interesting. Most of my family is from Rockingham County, North Carolina, and as well as William Quartz, who's from Rockingham County. This is Amy's son. This is my great-grandfather's grandfather. And it led me to do some investigation on the North Carolina website, where you can check slave schedules and slave deeds, specifically per county. And I looked at Wake County's records, and I came upon this record here. I'm pulling it up for you. I'm going to share my screen. This was a deed from Wake County, and it's written in cursive, which is you can't really read it here, but they give you a summary of the document. And in this document, Isaac Hunter, which is the grantor, which means the person who was selling these enslaved persons, was selling a woman named Amy, as well as four other persons. Amy was owned by Isaac Hunter, who owned the local tavern in Wake County. It was a very known Isaac Hunter's Tavern. Sold drinks, commodities, and goods to people who lived in the area, as well as people who were passing through. He sold Amy to this man named Burwell Perry Jones, as you can see right here on the document. Well, Burwell Perry Jones was the brother of Martha Jones, who was the second wife of the individual I showed you, Daniel William Quartz. And so my earliest Quartz ancestor, Amy Quartz, was owned by Martha Jones, the second wife of Daniel William Quartz, the gentleman I showed you. And so she got to Rockingham County through that marriage, through the marriage of Martha Jones to Daniel William Quartz. At some point when she got to the Rockingham County plantation, she had her son, William Quartz, who is the grandfather of my great grandfather. William Quartz lived as a farmer, worked on the Quartz plantation, was eventually emancipated and freed at the end of the Civil War. This is a modern picture of what the Quartz family homestead would look like. Probably didn't look as nice and neat as this was back then, or maybe was a different color or shade. But this was the homestead of the White Quartz family, and also the plantation which Amy and William lived and worked on. And so here's is the father of Daniel William Quartz, George Quartz. And here's Daniel William. There's an older picture of him, a younger picture, and an older picture of him. And here are the next piece of evidence and connecting my ancestry notations I had on ancestry.com to the actual people. So I reached out to one of the members of the white or the European Quartz family of Rockingham County, and they shared with me these Quartz family slave schedules or records. And in the records, there is a notation for a William Quartz born January 2nd and an Amy Quartz. And so William was the son of Amy. They both were owned, and here you see Amy here, born May 6th, William, her son, born January 2nd. They were owned on the Rockingham County Quartz plantation, eventually freed, and they lived in Rockingham County for the rest of their lives. William worked as a farmer, eventually owned his own farm, married a woman named Ellen Mullins, and they had Joseph Quartz, who was the grandfather of, or the father of my great grandfather. And so, what was interesting about all of these discoveries is it got me going. It got me thinking, like, what else is there to my family history? You know, was there some type of relation between the European Quartz family and the African American Quartz family, similar to a Sally Hemings Thomas Jefferson situation? And though there's no way other than DNA testing to conclusively prove that, my theory is that Daniel William Quartz, or one of his family members, or maybe even one of the plantation overseers, if they had them on the Quartz family plantation, you know, was the father of William Quartz, who was the son of Amy Quartz, and which eventually led to, you know, the African American Quartz family. That was fascinating, not because of the fact that I potentially had European ancestry, which is corroborated by my ancestry DNA results, but how mixed and kind of convoluted and fluid the history is and was, and how in America, and specifically during antebellum slavery, the lines were blurred several times, and a lot of us today are the products of that blurring. Whether you believe that was rape, or whether you believe a person who was enslaved could have consent or not, a lot of us today were the products of that. And aside from that, it got me to investigate and do some more research. So in the next series of videos, I'm going to be sharing a little bit more history about that Quartz family, those historical Quartz figures, as well as my mother's side and my father's maternal line. And we're going to be looking at Rockingham County. We're going to be looking at Alamance County and Caswell County, which are the counties that my family originate and still currently live. And for those of you who don't know North Carolina geography, Rockingham, Alamance, and Caswell counties are within the Piedmont region of North Carolina, which is in the center of the state. I'm going to share with you a map to kind of frame this for everyone. And thank you for being patient with me and my first time doing a video, YouTube video. And I'm doing this on Zoom as well. So, was the father of William Quartz, who was the son of Amy Quartz, and which eventually led to, the African American Quartz family. That was fascinating, not because of the fact that I potentially had European ancestry, which is corroborated by my ancestry DNA results, but how mixed and kind of convoluted and fluid the history is and was, and how in America, and specifically during antebellum slavery, the lines were blurred several times, and a lot of us today are the products of that blurring. Whether you believe that was rape or whether you believe a person who was enslaved could have consent or not, a lot of us today were the products of that. And aside from that, it got me to investigate and do some more research. So in the next series of videos, I'm going to be sharing a little bit more history about the Quartz family, those historical Quartz figures, as well as my mother's side and my father's maternal line. And we're going to be looking at Rockingham County. We're going to be looking at Alamance County and Caswell County, which are the counties that my family originate and still currently live. And for those of you who don't know North Carolina geography, Rockingham, Alamance, and Caswell counties are within the Piedmont region of North Carolina, which is in the center of the state. I'm going to share with you a map to kind of frame this for everyone. And thank you for being patient with me and my first time doing a video, YouTube video. And I'm doing this on Zoom as well. So sometimes it works with me, sometimes it doesn't. Okay, here is a map of what I call the Piedmont region, or what scientists and others call the Piedmont region. It's that region in the center of the state, in between the mountains and the coast. The Piedmont region is where most of North Carolina's major cities are, and is where a lot of plantations were. Even though many of the larger plantations were on the eastern part of North Carolina right here, the Piedmont region, specifically these three counties right here, Rockingham, Caswell, Alamance, is where my family comes from. But Amy Quartz, my earliest Quartz family relative, was sold and was presumably born here in Wake County. Here's a closer look at Rockingham County. Rockingham is where my family is from and where they currently live, a lot of them. Reedsville. Ruffin is just a little bit over here. Caswell County is where a lot of my mother's family is from, and Alamance County is where a lot of my father's mother's family is from. My theory is that since Rockingham, Caswell, and Alamance counties were in the northern part of the state, closer to Virginia, this was a area where a lot of people passed through. Also being a part of the Piedmont region where most of the cities were, these three counties on the northern coast, in this northern center coast of North Carolina, or not coast, northern center line of North Carolina, got a lot of travel and a lot of traffic from Virginia and other places of people coming into North Carolina or leaving North Carolina. And so, the stories of my family, the stories of many families, my family is not unique. There's probably several families within African American families that I know of, several African American families who can trace their heritage not only back to Africa and represent Africa, but also to Europe. And so This is the first video of a series of videos where I'll be further explaining this, showing some details, showing some evidence about historical figures in my family. And I'm not meaning historical like they have any type of notoriety or public fame, but they're historical to me because they were my earliest recorded ancestors that I have due to ancestry records. And they kind of were the pioneers of the family, and I wouldn't be here, and my parents and other family members would not be here had it not been for their life and their existence. And so this is the first video of a series of videos of sharing my family history, historical figures, not necessarily modern or living family members, and kind of encouraging others to investigate their family lines and kind of build a picture or a theory of your family history, supported by facts and some more of like a hypothesis of your family history, or an kind of an evolutionary theory of your family history, with ancestry records as well as my heritage records and other records. Because the historical record does cooperate, and it may take you in 1,000 different areas, but you get the basic facts right, you can build a cohesive story. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you tune in for other videos. Please give me some grace. This is my first YouTube video, my first time trying to put a YouTube video out sharing information about family history. So if I don't get everything right as far as the audio, or you hear some feedback, or there's a delay in me showing some of the documentation and pictures, give me grace, work with me, it will get better. But hopefully at the end of the day, the information is the thing you find impactful and it inspires you to do something.